Call this meeting to order. This is the City of Buckeye regular council meeting for February 4th, 2025. We are going to begin with the invocation led by Mrs. Dawn Cheatham, Forever in a Service Ministry, followed by the pledge led by Councilmember Hagestad.
It's an honor to join you and pray over your meetings and just to release our voices up to the Lord. So would you join me in prayer? Thank you, Heavenly Father, for your grace and your mercy that you pour out upon us. Thank you especially for the freedom that we have to worship, honor, and embrace you. Jesus, I thank you for the city leaders that you've placed in their positions to fulfill their role and to make decisions according to your plan and your purposes for not just the city, but most importantly for the people that live here. Father, your word tells us that as citizens, we should pray for the governmental authorities that are placed over us. And so, Father, as I usually do, I ask Holy Spirit that you inhabit the mayor and this elected council and bless each of them as they willingly serve this community. I believe that this council will make decisions that will positively influence the future of Buckeye for many years to come. I ask great blessings to be poured out upon them, their businesses and families, for their faithfulness to serve you. I ask, God, that you bless each level of city officials represented here tonight as they also serve in their respective positions. Lord Jesus, I ask that you give this council and the city leaders the wisdom of Solomon to govern amid the conflicting interests and growing concerns, not just tonight, but in every decision that they make. Father, give them a sense of the welfare and true needs of the people of Buckeye and its surrounding communities. Place within each of them discernment and a keen thirst for justice and rightness as they serve you in their positions. Give them confidence in making decisions that are good and fitting for this community and its future. Lord, I ask that you grant them the ability to work together in harmony with the focus on what's best for the future of this great city. I pray that you give each of them assurance of what would please you and what would benefit those who live and work in and around our beloved city of Buckeye. I ask that you bless each person with a personal peace in their lives and in the lives of their families so that they will find joy in the tasks you've called them to do. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
There's a lot of pressure. All right, thank you both very much. Donna, it's good seeing you. We will now have the roll call, please.
Councilmember Yonker.
Here.
Councilmember Berry.
Here.
Councilmember Goodman.
Present.
Councilmember Hegestad.
Here.
Councilmember Beard.
Here.
Eustis.
Here.
Mayor Orsborn.
Present. Thank you very much. Item number 2 is comments from the public. Members of the audience may comment on any non-agenda item of interest. Do we have any speaker request cards?
There are no speaker requests.
Okay, we'll move on to 3 awards, presentations, and proclamations. We have none for tonight. Item number 4 is consent agenda, new business. Approval of items on the consent agenda. All items with an asterisk are considered to be routine matters and will be enacted by one motion and vote of the City Council. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member requests. The section may include the approval of minutes from previous meetings. Council, for the consent agenda, what is your pleasure?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve consent agenda items 4A as in Adam through 4I as in Ida.
Second.
I have a motion for approval of the consent agenda and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And consent agenda passes unanimous. Okay, on to item number 5, public hearings and non-consent new business. 5A, council to hold a public hearing only regarding a blank annexation petition request to annex one parcel of land totaling approximately 3.7 acres from Maricopa County to the city of Buckeye located at 600 North Jackrabbit Trail, approximately 1,107 feet from the southwest corner of Roosevelt and Jackrabbit Trail. And Andrea Marquez will be presenting.
Yes. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Andrea Marquez, Senior Planner with Development Services. And as you mentioned, tonight we are here for the first public hearing for 195th Avenue property annexation. So before you is a vicinity map. As you can see, it's approximately 1,000 feet south of the I-10 It's just on the west side of Jackrabbit Trail. It's 3.7 acres. As you can see, it's surrounded by both Maricopa County jurisdiction and also the city of Buckeye. The proposal or the ask tonight for annexation is for approximately 3.7 acres. Under our general plan, it's under business commerce. The current zoning under Maricopa County is industrial 2, which is light industrial. The request is annexation. In the zoning, which will be equivalent to the Maricopa County, is our light industrial district I-1. So the intent is for any future improvements to be permitted through the city for storage expansion. Currently, there is an existing building and business. This facility is used for the manufacturing of prefabricated wood building wall panels, and everything is enclosed. The subject site meets the size, dimension, contiguity requirements established by state statute. The applicant, the city is required to record a blank petition, which was recorded on January 6th. All the required notices have been completed. There were no public comment other than the neighbor to the north just had questions for the applicant. No public comment specific to the annexation received to date, and there are no outstanding issues from any of the reviewing departments. As mentioned for tonight, there is no action. It's only to conduct a public hearing. We will be considering an ordinance for approving the annexation, and that is anticipated to be scheduled for March 4th. The next upcoming council meeting. Are there any questions?
Okay, thank you very much. First, this is a public hearing only, so we will open a public hearing. I don't have any speaker request cards. Do we have any? We have no speaker request cards for item 5A. So we will close the public hearing. And council, any questions on 5A? All right, I'm not seeing any questions. Thank you very much. We'll move on to item number 5B, council to hold a public hearing only regarding a blank annexation petition requesting to annex 8 parcels of land and adjacent right-of-way consisting of approximately 167.8 acres from Maricopa County to the city of Buckeye, located at the southwest corner of Verrata Way and Yuma Road. And Mandy Woods will be presenting.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. I'm Mandy Woods, Senior Planner with Development Services, and I'm presenting case PLZM 24-0006, which is an annexation located at the southwest corner of Verrata Way and Yuma Road. This is the first of 2 required public hearings for this request. And just to give a little bit of context on the request tonight, it does comprise of approximately 8 parcels and right-of-way, and the size is just under 168 acres. The exhibit on the following page will show the actual boundary, but just for some history, the right-of-way, and there are some city-owned parcels that were intended for right-of-way as well. Some of you may remember this began an annexation process separately 2 years ago, and then at the city's request, these were combined with this private request, just for simplicity of processing moving forward. For site context, as I mentioned, this is the boundary that's being considered, just under 168 acres, shown in red there. To the north, we have the vacant auxiliary field, which is owned by the State Land Department. To the south is vacant or agricultural land. East is some educational use, as well as a future commercial corner with storage and retail uses. The west is the existing single-family residential community, Sundance. The general plan land use for this is neighborhood. For context only, there is a concurrent minor general plan amendment that will be considered at a future meeting meeting. It will have to go through Planning and Zoning Commission and then return to council for consideration. It's just for context, but that's not part of the annexation request tonight. That is to amend approximately 45 acres along Verrado Way to business commerce. Existing zoning is County Rural 43, so the initial zoning that would be assigned upon annexation would be City of Buckeye Single Family Residential 43, which is the most similar district in the city. However, there is a concurrent rezoning to planned area development that, like the GPA, it is intended to go through P&Z and then will return to council at a future hearing as well. So that's just for context. The PAD itself includes a mix of residential uses, commercial uses at the corner, and then some business park uses as well. Request does meet all eligibility requirements that are established by state statute. The blank petition was recorded on January 7th of this year. All notices were completed. Public comment has been received to date regarding this application. All departments have reviewed and have no outstanding issues. And just like the last case, there's no action that's required tonight. This is just strictly to conduct a public hearing, and then consideration of an ordinance that would approve the annexation will occur at a future city council meeting. Well, I am here to answer any questions, and I believe the applicant is here as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mandy. I have no speaker request cards. Are there any on this particular?
No speaker
Okay,
requests.
and we,
Mr. Mayor,
yes, sir.
I do have one.
Let me first open the public hearing. We have no speaker request cards, correct? All right. And anybody from the public wishing to speak? I'm seeing none, so we will close the public hearing. And Vice Mayor.
Yes, just one question. Does this annexation include any part of Verrado Way or the bridge over the Roosevelt Canal?
It does include a portion of the right-of-way along Verrado Way that hasn't already been annexed. It's bringing in, here, let me just go back to the image. It does include a little bit of Verrado Way, yes.
Does it include the bridge?
I believe so. If that's not already in the city, it would include basically everything adjacent to the property.
Okay.
Okay, and any other questions from council? All right, this is public hearing only. There will be no action taken on this item. Thank you, Ms. Woods.
Thank you.
All right, item 5C, council to hold a public hearing, take action on resolution number 02-25, approving a minor general plan amendment to the Imagine Buckeye General Plan 2040 to change the land use designation of approximately 43.87 acres located at the northeast corner of Southern Avenue and Watson Road from neighborhood to business commerce. And Mr. Ken Galika is presenting.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. With your permission, I would like to present items 5C and 5D together. This evening, they are both related to the same property, and then as most of you are accustomed, at the end, we'll ask for separate public hearings, separate motions. So both of the proposals tonight are related to a project called Ventana Ranch 2. The first request is for a minor general plan amendment. The second is for a rezoning of the property. You can see the site is located at the northeast corner of Watson Road and Southern Avenue. It is currently vacant, used for agricultural purposes. Surrounding uses, the aerial, forgive me, it's a little bit old, but the Ross Dress for Less distribution center is located directly south of this site in the area that's in this aerial. Shown as agricultural. To the west of the property are two single-family residential subdivisions, Sonoran Vista and Riata West. To the east is a county island, which is a mix of large lot, rural, residential type of uses, as well as some kind of cottage industry, light industrial types of uses occurring on those properties as well. And then to the north is a platted subdivision called Ventana Ranch Phase 2. And as I go through this presentation, I'll kind of show you how this project works with the residential portion. The zoning is currently all planned residential, which is an obsolete zone that allows for basically single-family residential types of development on the property. Commercial and industrial types of uses are not currently permitted. And the general plan is neighborhood, which is the designation that supports a variety of residential, multifamily, single-family, varying densities, as well as supporting commercial types of uses that support the adjacent neighborhoods. So shopping center with a grocery store would be appropriate in neighborhood. An IKEA would not. That would be something much more regional in nature, and that would be more appropriate in the red color, which is the business commerce. So with that segue, the initial request is for a minor general plan amendment. That would cover not the entirety of the property. You can see just the portion outlined in black, which is on this slide shown in red. It would change the designation of that 43.87 acres from neighborhood to business commerce. What is business commerce? It's not a category we've had a lot of, we've taken forward to council. You have seen a lot of employment come through, and you have seen a lot of projects with neighborhood. We don't see as much business commerce, but as I mentioned, that is more for the development of community and regional serving commercial office, business park types of uses. Commercial uses that extend beyond serving just the small adjacent neighborhoods, more of a regional type of presence. They do allow business park uses within that business commerce land use designation. And those are light industrial uses that are occurring completely inside of enclosed buildings, so not your heavier industrial uses, not your outdoor storage types of uses. And usually they're limited in scale, where they're not producing a large amount of truck traffic to an area. So it's the type of buildings that would be occupied by a pool contractor or a flooring company or something like that in most cases. How is business commerce different from employment? Scale, typically. We're talking about size of buildings, the cross-dock warehouses that you see, Five Below, for instance. That would be an employment style of industrial development, whereas business commerce would be something more like you see along the freeway in some of the neighboring jurisdictions to the east. Smaller buildings, typically with storefront type of facades with smaller businesses in them. The second request is to take the full property, so that 43 or so acres that I just talked about, along with the portion just to the west that wraps the hard corner. And I do want to point out that the hard corner itself is, you can see where my mouse is moving, is owned separately by a different owner and is not included in this application. Ideally, in the future, this owner would be able to acquire that property and include it in a unified development. So the rezoning request tonight would be to change the zoning from planned residential, which I mentioned is for single-family residential, to a planned area development that would divide the site into two separate, distinct sub-areas. PADA area, which is the corner, kind of a reverse R-shaped or a 7-shaped property flanking that corner, would allow for commercial uses that would be based on the C1 and C2 commercial zoning districts that the city has, with uses more narrowly tailored. For instance, mini storage and car washes, and some of the uses that we've seen a proliferation of in the city that we think maybe are a little bit oversaturated at this point, have been eliminated from contention here, if so to speak. Development standards are based on our C2 district with no modifications requested. So all the setbacks, your building heights, et cetera, would be per that C2 code. The larger area, which is that 43-acre area that I mentioned, subject to the general plan amendment on the eastern portion of the site where my mouse is, that will be a business park area per the proposal, with uses based on that business park zoning district in our code, as well as a couple I-1 light industrial uses, but more narrowly tailored to eliminate any sort of heavier industrial uses and uses with outdoor components. So this would be, again, maybe contractor type of businesses that could operate in these facilities, small warehouses, nothing of a scale that would be typical of like an Amazon style warehouse. Development standards within this area would be based on our business park district in our code, with 2 exceptions. The 2 exceptions are, the maximum building height in BP is limited to 50 feet. The developer applicant is requesting to increase that to 65 feet. That's kind of an industry standard for some of these industrial types of buildings. To offset that, because that additional height will have impact on surrounding properties, staff has requested and the applicant has agreed to provide a wider, a longer building setback. We're adjacent to residential by 50%, basically, from 50 feet to 75 feet. All the other standards, your setbacks and whatnot, would be landscaping, et cetera, would all be per code. The second bullet point on the slide is an important one. We have, staff has recommended 2 conditions as part of our recommendation this evening. The first is to limit the maximum building area per building to 200,000 square feet. That 200,000 square foot number is kind of driven by some of the similar types of neighborhood relatable business park developments that exist in our region that are compatible with, again, adjacent residences. So with that, they would be limited to those smaller buildings. There would be no possibility of a large bomber building, that we like to call them. The second is a prohibition on cross-dock facilities. Those are the large warehouse facilities that have dock doors on both sides that generate a lot of truck traffic because one side is dropping off inventory, the other side is picking up inventory for delivery. That type of building would be prohibited here because we don't feel that is necessarily compatible with the surrounding neighborhoods. Staff does feel that the proposed PAD is consistent with the neighborhood designation as well as the proposed business commerce land use designation. If the general plan amendment is not approved, this proposal would not be consistent with the general plan. So it's very vital if you want to consider the zoning that the GPA first be approved. I do want to note here with staff's recommended conditions, those are the 2 things I just talked about in terms of limiting the building area as well as limiting cross docks. We feel that the development that would result from this planned area development would be an appropriate transition to the residential that's planned to the north, as well as the existing residential that is in the county to the east. The western side with the 2 existing single-family developments don't directly abut this site, but it would also be compatible with them. We do feel that the proposal does further compatibility and economic development related goals within our general plan. I mentioned already with regard to uses, heavy industrial uses would not be permitted. This would be, again, just light industrial, business park types of uses that were fully enclosed and not visible. You wouldn't see any sort of smoke. Typically, traffic would not be extremely high to these things. You wouldn't see a lot of truck traffic for the scale of uses we're talking about. The proposed development design standards, again, are almost 100% consistent with code with the 1 exception I mentioned, which is the height increase that we feel is adequately offset by the corresponding increase in setback. We do have good buffering and setback requirements built into this proposed PAD. There will be future site plan review by the Planning and Zoning Commission. It's required for projects of 75,000 square feet in aggregate or greater, and we would certainly expect that type of square footage to be developed on a site this large, again, 60 acres or so. The developer will complete their adjacent half-street improvements to both Watson Road and Southern Avenue on the south side of the site, and those would ideally include the intersection adjacent to the property they don't own, but that will be have to be determined based on the amount of right-of-way that's in place at that point. The city can acquire that right-of-way. The property will be served by city water and sewer. The extent of the improvements that are needed will be determined when a site plan is filed for the property, And all departments have reviewed this proposal and have no additional issues. There was a neighborhood meeting held back in August of last year at the Coyote Library. There were 10 attendees, and I would call the response to the proposal mixed. There were a few people there that were in support of the project, some from the nearby neighborhoods that were not. Maybe 60-40 in opposition, I would maybe classify that. We did receive one email from a nearby resident opposed to the project on the grounds of traffic and light impacts, which again, staff believes would be mitigated with the limitations on building size and cross-dock facilities. All notices of this meeting have been completed. The applicant team, I just want to point out, this is not required, but they did go door to door within that 500-foot mailing radius to talk to every homeowner who answered their doorbell. So we do appreciate that. Not required again, but they did kind of go above and beyond. And then P&Z did recommend approval of both GPA and rezoning back in October. There was one resident opposed and one resident in support of the project that spoke during the public hearing. Mayor, with that, that concludes my presentation. We do recommend approval of the general plan amendment, no stipulations associated with those, and condition the rezoning to PAD subject to conditions A through P. I do know Bill Lally with Tiffany and Bosco on behalf of the owner is here and has a presentation as well.
Okay, let's go ahead and do the presentation, Bill, if you would, and then we'll do a public hearing and then open for council questions.
And while Ken's bringing over the clicker that hopefully I'll figure out tonight. It's an inside joke. I screwed this up at the last hearing. So, but I do want to start off by saying it's been a really great process working with staff. We have a client who's owned this property for 5 years. They have been trying to figure out what makes the most sense here. And we have spent a lot of time with Ken, his staff, seeking input from all departments of the city, trying to figure out what the best fit here is. And Ken focused on the 55 acres there, and that's appropriately because that's what's in front of you tonight. But I want to step back a little bit and give you a little bit of the history of kind of where we came from. As staff indicated, the subject side is really the property that's in front of you tonight for the rezoning that's part of the general plan. The red portion to the north was always part of a future Lennar Phase 2. Lennar is the owner of all of this property. Ken went through the general plan amendment. Again, if you look at sort of the blue employment and then residential right up against it, in areas here in Buckeye, you can see just south of the blue, and in other parts of the valley, there are these transitions where you go from not just the heaviest use to the most least intense use. There are areas where you commonly would put some kind of a transition. And so that was really the thought process here with this entire process. To the north was Van Tanner Ranch North. It's a Lennar project, a market rate, a typical subdivision that was going to be extended onto the 150 acres to the south. And I think about 2001, 2002, Lennar started to hear rumblings of the Ross building getting permitted. And again, they had the zoning. They knew that there was employment across the street. But this was what was planned for that southern 150 acres, was more residential right up to Southern Road. When they decided or heard and saw the approval for 1.7 million square feet right across the street, they took a pause and said, is that what we should be doing? There are other areas in the valley and in the city where buildings have built next to residential. We have the opportunity to build residential next to a big building. Should we be doing that, or should we consider a different type of transitional buffer? And so we came to the city with some different ideas about 3 years ago. And at the same time, as I indicated, the city was moving towards needing attainable housing, needing, more kind of reverse the commute. So we started to look at what made the most sense given sort of the residential crisis that began to happen. We're across the street from an important employer for the city. Could we take a pause and see if we could do this differently? So that's when we came to the city in 2022. We said, hey, we have 150 acres, we're across the street from a fairly large user. What if we were to do something in kind? And for us, it made sense because we controlled the residential to the north. And we could be able to make sure that those buffers between our existing residential and these buildings were softer, that they made sense in terms of setbacks and buffers. We were met with, I think, a lot of kind of bright eyes and told to go back to the drawing board. And I think we heard a number of recommendations. And so we worked on it for about a year, trying to figure out how to soften up this transition from traditional single family down to sort of heavy employment. We ended up with a version that looks like this. And this is the overall 150 acres. And as Ken indicated, only the south 55 acres is really subject to the application tonight. But I think it's important to kind of throw it all in context because that's where we were. We were told to kind of go back to the drawing board. So we took 3/4 of that property and instituted a new residential component that Lennar's never done, bringing a residential product to the city that is going to be in the sub $300,000 range in terms of a purchase. These are single-family 4-owner homes, the purple and the yellow, and it's the new Lennar Cottage product. And so this has not been done yet in Buckeye. This is not a build for rent. This is not a multifamily. This is not a rental at all. This is a Lennar, the biggest home builder in the country, building a product that's desperately needed. We thought it made a lot of sense as we were butting against the residential to the east or to the west, and that we heard a lot from all of you on the panel and from staff saying, hey, be sensitive to existing neighbors. You know, we have other buildings that had zoning against existing neighbors. It probably probably wasn't the best idea, but they had zoning and it happened and we're living with it, but let's not make that same mistake. And so we dragged the residential down, and at the hard corner, we created about a 12-acre retail component. You know, this area, I think, is starving for retail. When we did talk to neighbors going door to door, some were concerned with just the intensification of the area and kind of the more traffic of just all of the uses can combine. But some were also saying, hey, we need some more services down here. I don't want to drive all the way up north along the freeway to get services. It would be nice to ride my bike and get something to eat or go to the dry cleaner. And so we wrapped the hard corner, and again, as Ken indicated, the hard corner is owned by the farmer who used to own the whole property. There's nothing we can do other than to hopefully we work with them closely and develop a retail corner. And so the retail corner is part of the PAD zoning A tonight. The PAD B is everything to the west of it, the other buildings that you kind of see in more of the gray. And again, I think what Ken indicated is we had a neighborhood meeting, went door to door, and we also talked to our neighbors in the county on the east side as well, and went and spoke with them, talked about what were some of the uses that they saw as a compatible use to some of those kind of quasi-business uses. And we did hear from them. They said, we would prefer probably not to have more residential right up against us. So what you're proposing in terms of a business park, not heavy industrial across the street, but business park makes sense for us. And there is a letter of support in the record that kind of demonstrates that support. These are the cottages. Again, I don't want to oversell this tonight because this is not part of the application. I'm just proposing it just because this is what's happening, and this is part of the transitional plan that we had in place, is to have single story, so there's no two-story, but single story cottage type villas on the north side of these commercial and business park uses, and then to the north of that, a typical Lennar residential. It's also important to know, to the north, Ventana Ranch, Phase 1, they dedicated a school site. They developed a well site. You can see kind of in the colored, just south of the purple, a second well site that Lennar is committing to the city as well. So this is sort of the area that we're living in. We've got larger buildings to the south, single family to the north and to the west. And so we're trying to come up with a transition. And so we very much appreciate the back and forth with Ken and his team, because the PAD itself is a kind of unique zoning tool whereby you're not just zoning it to industrial or some kind of category that has a list of uses and standards, you're zoning it to basically a build-your-own zoning. And so we went down through all of the allowed uses, and many times staff said, nope, 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 nope. And so that's in the code today. Those uses that don't make sense, the uses that are incompatible, we're stricken. And so we're narrowly tailored down to a set of uses for the commercial side and a set of uses for the business park side. So I think it makes a lot of sense, the PAD, although it took a lot longer. It's a little bit heftier document, but I think it was a better document in the end. As you can see, I did highlight, the letter of support did come from our neighbor who is probably the closest and the most impacted by the business park buildings. That letter is in the packet as well. He did come at the last hearing and spoke in support. Here's the letter as well. So again, what we try to do is take our time, work with staff, listen to your feedback, go out to the community, listen to their feedback, and try to make sure that we weren't repeating some of the mistakes that, and I wouldn't say mistakes, but some of the conditions that we've heard from many of you just don't make sense anymore. And on the left side of the panel or on the screen, you'll see some of those areas where there's anywhere from 200 to 800 foot distances. If you look on the right, the business park buildings to the closest Riata West residence were 1,700 feet. And we're buffered by our own residential, we're buffered by our own retail uses. And the other thing too is when Lennar builds the cottages to the north, they're gonna be able to disclose what's next to them. They're gonna be able to say, this is what's planned next to them, if in fact that isn't already built by then. And so that's different than living in a neighborhood and having something just kind of pop up next to you. And so having the same ownership, I think, is critical because we can build in CC&Rs, we can build in buffers, and we can make sure that if Lennar is selling this product next door, that they're not allowing something to be built that's going to take away from them. Now, the finances of this, and this is never part of the dialogue, but when Lennar went down this path of providing and trying to design this new product, this cottage product, sub $300,000 product, they had to do a lot to get there. No other builders are really doing that. So in order to get there, some of the financial modeling of this 150 acres is going to allow for that. So we're really taking the southern properties, bringing on residential or retail and business park developers to help subsidize the residential to the north so that we can have a price point. Lennar also does buy down in rates. They have, I think, sub 5% buy down in rates, I think, for the life of the loan. And Vicki, who's here from Lennar, will kick me if I'm getting this wrong. They also have help for down payments. So it isn't just a cheaper product, and I don't want to say cheaper, but more attainable product. The Lennar package has been developed and will be deployed here that will help owners, buyers get into this product. So it's again, not on the table tonight. This is not a residential rezone, but I think it's important to know that that has been Lennar's commitment this entire time. We took the next step and got some designs put together. This is along Southern, looking at what would be the business park buildings with sort of the aggressive landscaping. And again, Councilman, this is the mature state, but you will be able to see it at first, but this is, likely in terms of the setback off of Southern, this is what you'll be able to see. We will do our best to mitigate visual impacts along Southern. Of course, if you turn this way and look the other way, you'd see a 1.7 million square foot building. But I think it's important when we spoke to our neighbors and specifically the most impacted neighbor to the west or to the east, it was important that we had proper setbacks, proper screening, lighting that made sense along the buildings. And so this is a little bit of the exhibits for the retail, what the retail could look like. Again, as Ken indicated, a lot of this will come back through review at site plan. Again, the story I think is worth telling. On the left, this is where we were. We were way off, and you guys told us that. Don't put any more big boxes next to existing residents. On the right, after 3 years of going back and forth, we think we came up with a transitional site plan and project as a whole that makes a lot of sense for this area. The great thing about this area is the infrastructure's there, the water, the sewer, the electricity, everything is there. There's a light going in at the hard corner. We'll do our improvements. And this is a little bit different than other areas in the city where infrastructure is not quite there yet. And we hope the infrastructure will get there and those areas will boom. But this area is shovel-ready, and that's what we think makes this the most kind of dominant area today. And I think precisely why we wanted to have this transition. Ken indicated the stipulations. The stipulations were very important. Stipulations are things that we've talked about for the last few months and talked with many of you about. On stipulation D, we were going through, I think after the staff report was probably published, a back and forth with staff about the meaning of stipulation D and whether stipulation D really meant 200,000 square feet on the entire property or just per building. I added the per building in there just to make sure that that was clear. 2 is underlined because I was going to come here and pitch a larger building to you guys, and clearly we're not doing that tonight. We backed off on larger buildings. We want to make sure that we are staying within what staff thinks is reasonable. The second step is an additional ask, and I'll tell you that the additional ask is that there are going to be times when a building isn't going to be fully cross-dock. It will be a manufacturer that have a portion of a shipping component, and to say no cross-dock uses outright kind of prohibits us or kind of draws a line in the sand of some users that are off the table. And Lennar's not an industrial developer. They will find a partner that is. And all of the brokers and partners that said, hey, be as flexible as you can. Let the market dictate. But we've also heard that cross-dock in and of itself doesn't make sense as a location. So the stipulation in front of you, I've added a proposed amendment, a friendly amendment, that would basically say cross-docks are prohibited unless approved by the city council through a conditional use permit process. So meaning that if we found a use that had a component that was a cross-dock, not the entire thing, but a component that you as a city felt made sense on this piece of property, given the context, that we would at least have the right to come back and show you and pitch that. Your code has criteria for a conditional use permit. It's got 6 or 7 criteria that we would have to meet. This isn't just a subjective test. This is your code saying you have to meet all of these or we will say no. So all we did there is add language that would allow for that to happen in the future. That is not on E. That's not part of staff's recommended stipulations. Staff can comment on their opinion on it, but that is something that we would ask council to consider tonight, which would be approval with a minor deviation on D, which is just a clarification for per building, and then the addition to E. But with that, Mr. Mayor and council members, be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lally. Let's go to the public hearing first, and then I'm sure there'll be some questions for you here in just a minute. We'll open the public hearing. Do we have any speaker requests for the public hearing on item 5C?
There are no speaker requests?
No speaker requests. Any from the public wishing to speak? I'm seeing none, so we'll close the public hearing on 5C, and Mr. Attorney, we'll take these individually, right? So hear and complete 5C, and then we'll go to 5D, do the public hearing process again. Okay, thank you. Okay, and then let's go to council and council questions.
Yeah.
Okay, Councilman Barrett.
Can you use the word business commerce? And you're saying that's for like a pool company, electric company that has a small business that would be operating out of this small warehouse is what you're saying?
Yeah, Mayor, Councilmember Barry, those are just 2 examples of the type of businesses that would typically locate in a business commerce. It could be everything from retail, hotel.
CrossFit, things like that? CrossFit? that
Yeah,
type of stuff?
sure. Indoor gymnastics, those types of facilities go in these types of buildings because of their higher ceiling heights as well. So potentially, yeah.
And another thing is you wanted to go from 50 feet to 65 feet in height. Does anyone know how tall Ross is across the street? Off the top of your head, I know that's
Mayor, council member, I want to say it's right around that. It's probably 60, 65 feet.
okay.
I can confirm that for you, though. Let me look into that and confirm it, but it's going to be
So
very
the building
similar.
that they're building is not much higher than that. So it's pretty much the same height
Yeah.
and standard.
Okay. Yeah, Councilman Beard.
Will the homes to the north be affordable as in under 300,000?
Yep, Mr. Lally.
Mayor and Councilman Beard, as I indicated on the record, and I confirmed with my client today, Lennar, they're shooting for a 285. This Department of Real Estate frowns upon developers and builders going out there and publishing before their public report is done. And so I'll just caveat that, which is home builders usually don't say it will be this. But we have assurances from Lennar that under 300 and the target is 285. And again, Vicky's going to kick me if I've got that wrong, but I made sure to confirm today. But yes, we would put that on the record that that is the target.
Are you willing to stipulate that?
Well, and here's the challenge, and Mayor, Councilman Yonker, I chatted with my good friend across the attorney table the other day about this, because we did talk about this. And so the industrial retail is in front of you today, not the residential, so I don't know if it's appropriate. I think I can say on the record, Councilman Yonker, that will be the target sales. Is it appropriate to put as a stipulation on a commercial PAD? I would defer to your city council.
Thank you, Mr. Lally. I appreciate that. Mayor, Councilmember Yonker, that's a good question. The applicant is correct. We are only dealing with the PA or the general plan amendment as it relates to the 60 plus or minus acres at the south of the property. And so imposing a condition on the project to the north through this is probably not something that we'd be comfortable doing under the current state of law. I think you've heard from Mr. Lally. I don't think he's in a position to say that that's what it's going to be, but I think if you carefully parse his words, he says that Lennar has targeted the price point for this product to be around $285 and somewhere south of $300,000, and I think you're just probably going to have to take him at his word, sir.
Councilman Beard, you're still up, yeah.
The development to the north, will that be coming up to council here soon, or has it already been done?
I can address that. Mayor, Councilmember Beard, the Planning and Zoning Commission approved the preliminary plat for the neighborhood to the north back in October, or actually, no, it was December, the first Planning and Zoning Commission meeting in December. The final plat will be coming forward to City Council for approval at some point. Unidentified date.
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Beard, just to add to that, so that the property, the residential to the north, it didn't need a rezoning. It didn't need anything other than just platting, so we weren't upping the zoning. So it didn't make sense to go along with this package. That could go before this did, and so Lennar advanced that because they see the need.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Councilman Berry.
So you're planning on building the business commerce before you build the houses? Is that that's what you're trying to get at?
Mayor, Councilman Berry, it's a difficult question. I think the market maybe a year ago was a lot different than it was today with interest rates, and I think we were thinking a year ago that would be the very first thing that goes is the business park component, because frankly everyone wanted to be in Buckeye with business park and industrial type buildings. I don't know if the financial markets today is the same, so I think it'd be hard for me on behalf of Lennar to really predict a industrial. Either way it goes, whether the residential goes first, we will be notifying them of whatever gets approved to the south of them, or vice versa. If it goes first, then they will clearly have an understanding of what they're buying next to.
I do like the fact that you're going to be building smaller homes that's affordable for families. As I was campaigning, I just got elected. A lot of people were talking about affordable housing, and also the mayor said nationally they were talking about that as well. So I do like that product as far as affordable housing. It's good for our community, good for our city, and we'll just see. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lally, just for the record, people still do want to come to Buckeye. The interest rates haven't changed that at all. Yeah. Stupid.
I would absolutely retract that and say everyone wants to be in Buckeye.
Thank you. Thank you. Just want to correct the record. Okay.
I do have a question.
Councilman Yonker.
map here that you're showing on the screen, I see that we have the setbacks for 1,700 feet, 360 feet. What is it on the east side to the homes that are in the county? I noticed that there's not an
let's
arrow on
see.
that.
Mayor and Councilman Yonker, it is very, very hard to see, but if you, and I don't have it outlined, but if you were to add up the little white boxes on that southern building to the building to the east, it's about 250 feet from building to their property line. Probably 300 from building to building.
Okay. And that one parcel that's right there by itself on the corner, all the way to the bottom right of that picture, that's actually a commercial property there, correct? The one you had highlighted as supporter?
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Yonker, to the, I think I have a picture. So yeah, to the southeast.
Yeah,
To the southeast. So the southeast is a rural residential, county island, zoned rural residential, but they do have quasi-business structure located there, yeah.
Councilmember, if I may, just to provide a little clarity too, I just want to note, when we're discussing this particular site plan, this is just very conceptual. So more so than this, it's the setbacks that are built into the document and the buffering that's required. So the layout of this would be determined at the site plan stage, but we would have to meet all of our requirements. So conceivably, the building could be closer to that east property line than what's shown here.
Okay.
But still far enough that staff feel comfortable.
So let me ask you, Councilmember Barry asked about the height. So we're going from 50 to 65. What do we gain with 15 feet? And if we are looking at this as a true transitional use from the 65 feet, as we were thinking that Ross is to the south, how does adding the 15 feet, what's gained for that?
Mayor, Councilmember, I'll defer to Bill to answer why they're requesting that. I could just speak from a planning and compatibility standpoint. The trade-off for the additional required setback was sufficient for staff to feel that it would offset the impact of that height on
Are we
the
talking
adjacent
about
property.
sight lines is what you're accomplishing with that goal? Okay.
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Yonker, so your industrial code today has a little bit of a step back concept in it where, you can get a little taller the further away you get back from it. We try to mirror that, and that's pretty common, throughout the valley. Why 65 feet? Good question. We asked all of the industrial, business park, developers, brokers to say, hey, that's not what we do, but how can we set this property up for success? How can we attract the best users? What are the things that cause users to go look somewhere else? And height was one of them. It said in the inside height, as you indicated, some of the sports, inside sports, they need a taller inside. Some of the new warehousing techniques have taller racks, so they need a taller inside height for inventory. So we shot for 65 feet because it makes the most sense for the most users to go in there. And then staff says, if you're going to do that, you got to push it back. And so we agreed that, for 15, we'll give 25 feet more of a setback. So we felt like that was a good compromise.
Okay. And you had mentioned earlier, Mr. Lally, that your client was figuring out what makes most sense for the site. From what angle are we talking about most sense? Are we talking about most sense for them as the building it, or most sense for the people of Buckeye?
Mayor and council members, it's a good question. You always have good questions.
I do.
Very thoughtful.
I ask them.
Yes. So we spent about 2 years figuring out what would make the best transition, not just for Lennar, in terms of the window of selling the homes as opposed to coming right off of Southern into, a model complex, and they're looking at, a massive building and pulling into the model complex and parking and staring at the building. That was one component, obviously trying to sell, and not necessarily, if there was trucks running up and down, from Ross and our cars trying to get in off of Southern, is that a good mix of uses? The answer was kind of no. So let's push the residential to the north, have the residential accessing off of Watson. Let's avoid that, and then let's cover it up and screen it, for that future residential enclave of little casitas up there. So that was one component, the future buyer and selling it to the future buyer. The other part was trying to come up with a couple uses where we would have the most flexibility up against residential. So sometimes you'll see residential backing up to a shopping center that has a Fry's or a Walmart or something like that. There's lots of deliveries, lots of parking lot lights, lots of activities. Maybe it's a Walmart, they're open 24/7. So we were also trying to pick uses that made sense to locate right next door to these new residences. And we feel the smaller component retail, the business park, which was probably going to be more of a hours of operation in the normal standpoint, made a lot of sense to tuck up right next to it. So I think it was how does Lennar build a component that is sellable? And how does Lennar build in something next to it that's compatible? And then how do we transition down to kind of a larger use? So it wasn't an easy answer, and it was a good question. So thank you.
So we mentioned that there was, at the community meeting, there was about a 60-40 split for support. I was at that meeting. I didn't find that. I found that everybody I spoke to was not supportive of it. Just for clarification's sake, from my standpoint that was there, and I don't think I missed anybody at that meeting. Also, I need another thing for clarification. You had mentioned that in part of your presentation that the thought process was changed around the 2000-2001 mark at that point. But then you also mentioned that they had owned it for about 5 years. So which were you?
Yeah, Mr.
You get some clarification on that?
Mr. Chairman, Councilman Yonker. So they closed on it in 2001.
Okay.
Change happened in 2022, and that was about when Ross was approved and we knew that what was happening. And so up until about 2021, they were planning to do single family all the way down to Southern.
Okay, so you just said it backwards on whenever you were doing your presentation, that they had made the change 5 years ago and they bought it back in 2001.
I do apologize.
Okay, no, I'm not busting your chops. I'm just asking for clarification because it didn't line up. Okay. That's all I've got. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Any other questions from council? I think, so two stipulations. One is D, which limits the per building size to 200,000. And then the other potential stipulation, which Mr. Lally has asked for, is the conditional use permit stipulation. And I think I'm understanding what they're trying to do is provide a maximum flexibility for whatever user comes in. And I think we're not, at this point, willing to say, yes, let's just blanket and kind of go speculatively cross-dock facility. But if you get a cross-dock facility user coming in, I think obviously we're not wanting the entire facade being cross-dock, but maybe there's some component of it that could be under a conditional use permit approved. Is that the gist of that stipulation?
Mayor, yes. That's the stipulation that Bill has introduced. First of all, the change to D to specify per building, that was always our intent. So staff fully supportive of that minor modification. The modification stipulation E allowing for the council approval of the conditional use permit. I guess you can look at it one of two ways. The first is you're not approving anything. You're not requiring, you're not tying yourself to approve something down the road. So it's not so much of a harm. The other way to look at it, depending on which side of the bed I get out on, is that I don't know if I see a condition that the cross-dock will be appropriate. I mean, even though they can propose it, I'm not sure there's something that they're going to be able to do that I'm going to necessarily think is compatible with the surroundings. So if we want to go through the process and give them the opportunity, I guess there's no harm in that. But at the same time, I'll take some convincing to be able to support it.
But there's nothing compelling us to approve that conditional use permit at that time. It's really completely our call, staff input. I would assume that would go through P and Z as well.
Yes, Mayor, typically, so this is another little bit of a nuance or wrinkle to the stipulations. Typically, conditional use permits are solely a Planning and Zoning Commission matter. The way the bill is introduced, the stipulation, it would go to P and Z for recommendation and then come to council for ultimate approval. So there would be more oversight than typical for that. As far as is it committing you to anything, it's committing you to approve it if you find that it meets the requirements of the conditional use permit, that it's a compatible use, that it's these things. I think you could probably find reasons to not approve the conditional use down the road, depending on what the proposal is. That would be valid reasons.
And I don't think the intent is some kind of a bait and switch on our part. It's not leading the applicant along. It's, I think we've talked about, really depends on what that use is. And if that use came in and said, 80% of the building, we want facade on the front side, we need 3 doors over here for inputs or exports or whatever they are, and then the entire back is docks, then I think that's something worth considering, especially if we relate it to who that potential user could be. And I have no idea who that is, and I don't think they have any idea. That's just leaving them some flexibility for the future.
And that's a good point. I've always looked at this like, a cross dock would be complete 2 sides of dock doors, but, maybe there is some small variation of what that is that could potentially be appropriate. It's hard to say, but possibly.
But we can punt that to later and then have the opportunity to say yea or nay at that time. Okay. Okay.
No, you answer.
Okay.
Do you agree with that? Are we locking ourselves into anything if we agree to that stipulation?
Mayor, Councilmember Hagestad, I think Mr. Galika got it right. I think that's right. You're giving them the opportunity to present a future case. They've got to meet all the criteria for the issuance of a use permit. So I don't think you're committed, locked in on anything other than that you'll give them an opportunity.
So at most, it's a maybe.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
It could be a no, it could be a yes. There's several criteria that have to be met in order for a use permit to issue, and you're the finder of fact as it relates to those criteria.
If
Councilman Yonke, you have something else?
Yeah, just on that standpoint, we're talking about the maybe and the if they come back with that, and that's all fine and good. But we also need to remember, as this group of 7 up here, that we are a representative government, and if we're hearing from our constituents they don't want X, Y, and Z, it is our responsibility to hold the line and make sure that we're doing that for them. That's all I have to say on it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, council, for agenda items 5C, what is your pleasure?
Mr. Mayor, I'll go ahead and make a proposal to accept 5C with the 2 stipulations proposed to be included.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion for approval and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And opposed?
Nay.
Hey.
Right, I heard 2 nays. Actually, can we just roll call vote that? So we're official on who we have?
Councilmember Yonker,
Nay.
Councilmember Barry,
Aye. Aye.
Councilmember Goodman,
Aye.
Councilmember Hagestad,
Aye.
Councilmember Beard, Vice Mayor Hustis,
Aye.
Mayor Worsborn.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. All right, Mr. Lally.
I do hate to interject. The 2 stipulations were actually for D. So the zoning case.
We just took 5C.
The
That
C
was
is
the GPA. We're doing these separate, Mr. Lally, so we're about to take action on 5D. 5C there were no stipulations to 5C. It was to 5D.
I think the motion was to add the 2 stipulations.
Oh, it did? I did not hear that.
You could add those on to C as well.
No, hold on. Hold on, I appreciate that. I apologize, I neglected to hear that motion as it was made. We're going to need to go back then and fix that. There are no stipulations attached to the general plan amendment.
Okay.
That's my fault, Mayor, I apologize for that. If we could, yeah, I think we can rescind the vote, and let's just start over again on the motion. If we could get another motion made on item 5C.
Okay. Vice Mayor, would you like to make another motion without those two stipulations?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve item 5C as in Charles.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for 5C, and roll call vote again, please.
Councilmember Yonker,
Nay.
Councilmember Barry,
Aye.
Councilmember Goodman,
Aye.
Member Hegestad. Aye. Councilmember Beard,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Huestis,
Aye.
Mayor Orsborn.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Roughly the same count? Okay, thank you. Plus or minus. All right, so item 5D, we'll need to hold a public hearing. I do not have any speaker request cards for that. Do you have any over there?
Request.
No speaker request cards. Any from the public wishing to speak? I'm seeing none, so we will close the public hearing. We've had the discussion. Nothing else to add, Mr. Gleeka, on 5D. And we'll need a motion, and Vice Mayor, I'm assuming you're making that with the two stipulations on this one?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. To make a motion to approve agenda item 5D as in David with the two stipulations proposals included.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion to approve agenda item 5D with the two stipulations. And we have a second on that also. So can we do a roll call vote on this as well?
Councilmember Yonker,
Nay.
Councilmember Barry,
Aye.
Councilmember Goodman,
Aye.
Councilmember Hegestad. Councilmember Beard,
Nay.
Vice Mayor Huestis,
Aye.
Mayor Orsborn.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. All right, Mr. Galika, thank you for all your work on this, and Mr. Lally, thank you. All right, item 5E, council to take action on resolution number 01-25 adopting fees for solid waste services pursuant to Arizona revised statutes, providing for repeal of conflicting resolutions and providing for severability. And we have Miss Amy Murray presenting.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Amy Murray, Interim Public Works Director, here tonight to discuss residential solid waste rates. Tonight, we are asking Council to take action to approve Resolution 01-25, adopting solid waste fees. How we got to this point. Our previous solid waste contract expired November 30th of last year, so we began a competitive bid process last February. From there, on November 19th, Council awarded a solid waste contract to Republic Services, which became effective December 1st. This contract is a 7-year contract with 3 one-year extension options. We've been asked how we are educating the community throughout this process. The dates listed in bold are per state law. However, we have built a comprehensive educational outreach plan, which began last year and will continue throughout this year. We are taking advantage of the many forms of communication to our citizens, from digital and social media to print and in-person discussions. This is a multi-team effort between several city departments and Republic Services, and we are also working with homeowners associations. This slide shows the proposed breakdown of the monthly costs over the course of the 7-year contract. There are 2 rates listed, a rate for automated curbside 96-gallon cart service and a rate for the in-ground 29-can collection. The in-ground rate is for residents with in-ground cans only. Now, the reason for the price difference is the in-ground collection is not automated, it is not collected curbside, and it requires 3 times more labor than the automated service. The contract line is the cost of the contract to the city from Republic Services. The city fee line is the cost to oversee the operation of the solid waste contract. Our environmental services division, including household hazardous waste. This fee also supports our utility billing and customer service functions and includes the amount needed to approach our 60-day council-approved reserve requirement. This chart represents how we are building towards the target reserve each year of the proposed rate plan. The green line represents the 60-day reserve policy. The red line is our projected reserve balance, and the blue bars represent net revenue. The rates presented tonight support the Solid Waste Enterprise Fund to approach our financial policy reserve goals, as we have placed an emphasis on building towards a reserve throughout the rate plan. And we project we will be near to achieving this goal by the end of the 7-year contract. Now, throughout the course of the contract, staff will monitor the fees, and should adjustments need to be made, we will return to council as needed. Oftentimes, we're asked how we measure up to neighboring communities. With a proposed rate increase, Buckeye remains in the lower half of this graph and is represented by the yellow bar. Now, this graph does not take into account what other cities are doing in the future, but it is assumed they will be looking at increasing their rates. Now, this chart represents the 96-gallon carts in terms of benchmarking, and we do not have data to compare benchmarking for in-ground rates. Now, with this contract, we will also offer elective service rates. These services are on an as-needed basis. They are not monthly fees. When residents sign up for a solid waste account, they have a 30-day grace period in which to request swapping of their carts at no charge. However, if after this grace period they need their carts swapped or requested their carts to be swapped, they will be charged $30 per cart. Now, please keep in mind that this does not include a swap request for a normal wear and tear, such as a broken wheel, a cracked can, or a broken lid. We also have on this contract a damaged cart fee, which we will charge when residents have negligent use for their cart, such as it burns down because of hot ashes or fireworks. But once again, this fee will not apply due to normal wear and tear. There is no fee for normal wear and tear swapping of carts. So that is the end of my presentation tonight. Thank you. And we are asking council to take action to approve Resolution 01-25, adopting fees for solid waste collection.
Okay, thank you, Amy. Council, any questions? Yeah, Councilman Hagestad.
Yeah, do we have a chart up there for the rates going forward versus the contract price?
So the contract price would be for the 96-gallon rate would be the first line, and the contract line for the in-ground rates would be on the fourth line. And then the total 96-gallon rate fee would be on the third line, and then the in-ground rate fee total would be on the bottom line. So we have this broken out by the contract rate that Republic Services charges to the city, and then the city fee to implement the contract.
Okay. And it's my understanding that the neighborhood that requires the in-ground service has an obligation in their covenants, in their HOA, that requires the in-ground key. Are you aware of that, or have you looked into that at all?
I have not looked into that at all, that is a requirement. I do know that that is a service that they have opted to have, and there are several thousand homes that have been approved to have this service.
Yeah. So I've looked in this, we've looked into this over the years several times, and there are, my understanding, there are covenants in that area that require the in-ground cans, and then in order to switch to the 96-gallon carts, there would actually have to be infrastructure made that would allow them to put the cans behind pre-made walls or brick walls or other privacy. Maybe the gentleman behind you has more information.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilman Hagestad. Yeah, so right now, the PCNRs do require that the residents in this area do have in-ground cans. And the idea is if they want to move to above-ground cans, the 96-gallon cans, there would need to be some way to hide them, to put them behind a bush or behind a fence or behind their property or in their garage.
In the garage, right. So we've looked into this over the years, and we've not only talked to the HOA about it, but there's a significant, so one, the point I'm trying to make here is this is not a city decision that requires them to have the cans in there. And in order to get the cans out of the ground and behind a fence or in the garage, the covenants, the actual requirements on the land on those properties would have to be changed, and then additional infrastructure would be required. Is that your understanding?
Yeah, it's my understanding that they would need to be able to actually vote on it, that they would need to make that decision. That's correct, Councilman Hagestad.
So it's not a city decision?
That's correct.
Okay. And then we've also kind of done I've done some informal discovery up there, talking to the residents and talking to at least one well-represented group up there. And I'm told that their membership overwhelmingly wanted this. And when we looked at it in past years, the residents indicated to us that a large percentage or portion of them wanted these in-ground cans because one, didn't want them junking up their garage. Two, they didn't want to have to put up the privacy fences. And then there was also concerns about individuals who, on the active adult side, that would struggle with the 96-gallon can, getting it to the curb and getting it back. So do you remember any of that, or can you confirm all that?
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Hagestad, absolutely. Thank you for bringing that up. We actually did present and tried to have, we had ongoing discussions between Public Works and the HOA there and many of the members of their community on the opportunities that they would have, the needs that they would have to be able to make those decisions, because it would be up to the community to make those decisions and the different solutions that could occur. There was a lot of feedback that they did not want to move in that direction, that the members of the community did not want to move in that direction.
Thank you. And then the last thing is I wanted to point out, staff, Doug and the city manager and the city attorney worked really hard, even though there is a significant increase on those in-ground rates. We worked really hard to even those rates out so that there wouldn't be a huge increase in the first couple of years. In fact, the first year is only $6, and there is no increase in the second year, just to kind of even those out and make it, we have to cover the rate of the contract, and then we have to cover our costs as well as a city. So we did the best we could, and I think the executive team and all others and yourself for trying to make that as easy as possible on the residents. And I understand it was a lot of work, and even with Doug without a contact in, we got it to these rates. Thank you very much, everybody.
We had a contactless Doug.
We did.
Yeah.
I wish I had a camera, because him looking at a computer screen without a contact was pretty.
Like a Popeye episode. Appreciate you saying all that, and tremendous amount of work, I think, in softening, and that's what you were getting at with the actual increase in price, softening that over time, so it's not such an abrupt increase in the first year.
Yes.
Yep. Okay. Council, then on item 5E, what's your pleasure?
Mr. Mayor, I'll make the motion that we approve agenda item 5E as in Edward.
Second.
We have a motion for agenda item 5 Echo and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? And 5E passes. All right, thank you very much. Item number 6, comments from mayor and council.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to just bring up and congratulate our community services for the Buckeye Days festivals that they put on. Walked up and down with you and Tina, and it's kind of a cool day to be down to Buckeye, walk all the way from 4th Street down to the museum and check out the cookout down there and walk back. It was a great day. So good job.
Yeah, it was. Yep, ditto. Yep, Vice Mayor.
I would like to second what my colleague just said. Buckeye Days were a lot of fun, and I'd like to especially comment on the kids section of it down where they also had the hamburgers down by the swimming pool. They had a great group of bounce houses and a lot of stuff down there really entertaining for the kids this year. And I think we need to promote that even more if we have to put signs out on the street or something, because I think it was underutilized. There were a lot of kids down there having a lot of fun for quite a while. So they had an enjoyable time. And the hamburgers were very good as usual down there. Also, I'd like to compliment the fire department. They had the ribbon cutting and the push-in of the fire truck at 7:07, and the folks down in Blue Horizon seemed to enjoy it because they were even walking in the back gate to join the celebration and the breakfast we had and everything else down there. So that was a lot of fun. And I think the neighbors down there really enjoyed it and really do support having a firehouse right next to their homes. So that's all I've got this evening, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Goodman.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank the city for supporting an event last week, the White Tank Mountain Conservancy Diamond in the Desert event. The Conservancy's committed to protecting the White Tank Mountains, as well as wildlife corridors that large and small animals can move back and forth. That was a great success, raised over $68,000 for the Conservancy. So I want to thank the city for their support.
Thank you, Councilman. So agree on every single one of those things. It's like it's a really, really busy time, especially for community services. And when community services is doing events, everybody's doing events because there's fire involved, police involved, and every other department that that's a part of that. So thank you for all of the events you have put on and the event that's coming up, not this coming weekend, but the following weekend, the Air Fair, 14th, 15th, and 16th. It's going to be an awesome event, bigger and better than last year. Fireworks, the same plane that was shooting fireworks off of his wings. Dan, I hope I'm not stealing any of your talking points. And night air show with a, I think I could say drone show out loud. We have sponsors for that. So Friday night will be the practice night, but Saturday night is the big evening air show, 2 air shows that day. So, and then just a wonderful relationship that we have with AOPA and the partnership that we have with them, as well as this year, return of the military collector vehicles. So a lot of fun to be had out at the Buckeye Air Fair. If you haven't been to that, get to it. If you have been to it, get to it again. It's a lot of fun. And then just a thank you to all staff. When items come up like this, we've left the site comparison on for whatever reason. We should have nice calming music after all of the conversation related to these things. This or the agenda item that talked about the trash rates or all of the other stuff that's on consent, there is a massive amount of work that goes on behind the scenes by staff. And it may be Ken that gets up and speaks or Amy that gets up and speaks, but there is a tremendous amount of work that's happened behind the scenes on that. And just thank you to all staff for everything that you do here at the City of Buckeye and making the city work and making business happen here in the City of Buckeye. Greatly, greatly appreciate it. And with that, item number 7 is City Manager's Report and Summary of Current Events.
Thank you, Mayor. Between you and Councilmember Yonker, you stole all my thunder, so we're good. Thank you.
Glad we could steal it. Item number 8, proposal for future agenda items. I'm hearing none. Item number 9, with nothing else, we are adjourned.
I was planning